So here is, let's take a look at these and figure out what we expect to be like big game changing threats. Um, so we do see the QD Terrawater Volcarona threat on Yusei's side. I think that's probably the most interesting thing we're gonna see. Do they have does Shohei have like consistent answers to that? I think is the question we need to ask. Amoonguss seems like a pretty good answer. It's not running Giga Drain plus Safety Cogs, so it can't really fight an Amoonguss if Amoonguss Terra Waters. It should just be able to put it to sleep, so that's what I'd be looking at. So I think biggest threat on this side is probably the Volcarona, right? Like this would be presumed biggest threat, right? It's going to get support from the Grimmsnarl. Like this feels like the focal point of the team on first impression. Hex on Amoonguss. Life Orb Hex. What the fuck? That is cool. I like that a lot. That means that you can actually do damage with Spore. It means you can do damage with Thunder Wave. Like, that's pretty cool. I like that. That is really sick. I didn't even know Amoonguss got Hex. That's really dope. I like that a lot. So, focal point's going to be Volcarona. This is the thing you're trying to set up, but you have some other modes, right? You have just consistent Pokemon. Baxcalibur with Terrafairy Terrablast. This has been popping up a little bit. I've seen it on like some ladder sets. It feels pretty good. Baxcalibur's got crazy high attacks, so I'm actually, this is like the big secondary threat. Give it a circle. So yeah, I expect Volcarona to be the focal point. This is going to be supported by Amoonguss, Gyarados, Cress, and Grim. These all exist specifically to deal with the weaknesses of Volcarona, right? So we have Ally Switch and Lunar Blessing to both heal it and protect from opponents. For example, Urshifu going for a Surging Strikes into the Volcarona, switching Ally Switch, Cresselia tanks it, hits it with Rocky Helmet, does a bunch of damage, Volcarona gets a free attack off. Could be very, very, very good for Yusei in this match. Grimmsnarl, I've seen this picking up a ton. I actually am kind of a big fan of this set right now. Spirit Break, Parting Shot, Reflect, and Light Screen is just so consistent. Spirit Break does decent damage. Parting Shot gives you switches. I really like the Parting Shot into Intimidate combo, so you get -2 attack, -1 special attack on whatever you hit with it. It's also a way to like get a relevant attack drop down on stuff like dark types like Qianpao. Because normally, right, you can't Parting Shot into that because you're a Prankster Pokemon, right? But if you Parting Shot into its partner, just so you can switch out and get Gyarados in, drop an Intimidate down, that could be game changing. So I like this cycling that they have going on here. This core is really similar to what I was running on a team where I was trying to make Bellabolt work. And I got a ton of really like impressive wins, and it's almost entirely due to the combination of these two and how much them together support something else to become a game-ending threat. So I'm pretty excited about that in particular. Definitely think this will be the focal point. Definitely think this is the big secondary threat. Surprise set is definitely Life Orb Hex. I don't know how this is going to work honestly without like Rage Powder. I feel like that's a pretty big missed opportunity to have. Rage Powder is just so good. Not having it feels not great. But yeah, so that's sort of what I'm feeling about this team. Let's talk about this team now. This looks really similar to the one that he won Worlds with. He's got a lot of really solid threats. Iron Hands is one of the. I mean, we have some of the most high usage stats Pokemon in the entire game. I think this might actually be the top 6. Let's take a look. Actually, so if we pop up, oh no, I drew on it and now it's mad. I drew on it and now it's mad. Fuck. This is going to stay up because I can't get rid of this right now. I don't want to get rid of it. But top 6, Flutter, Urshifu Rapid, Amoonguss, Tornadus, Iron Hands, Chien-Pao. Oh, wait, no. Hold on. Let's make it the high elo. Okay, yeah. So Lando's outside of the top 6. Everything else is inside of the top 6. Tornadus. So switching Tornadus for Lando. Everything else is top 6. This is, like I said, I think this is the same team that he used to win Worlds just now, or recently. So I expect this to do very well while we are studying. Yes, we are. Look, I told you that, or I said in the fucking tweet that I was about to go crazy with this analysis, right? I have these team sheets fucking saved already on a Google document. I have notes about every player from the introduction section. And we are breaking down teams, and we will continue to break down teams throughout the entire day. We're going to break down plays throughout the entire day. I'm going to lose my voice from talking so much. All right, but running it into what we can expect on this side, not having Rage Powder as something to deal with is really nice for this team, I think. I'm not sure it's going to matter a whole lot in like the grand scheme of things, but it's going to be really nice to have. Icicle Crash, Sacred Sword, Sucker Punch. I'm actually a fan of dropping Sacred Sword for Crunch, but this is pretty standard. These two are like it's kind of hard for me to add analysis to this team that hasn't already been said, right? Like these two are the hyper offense core, right? These two shit damage. They shit damage. You know? They shit damage, right? They annihilate things, right? Landorus here. This is interesting, having Safety Gogs, Terra Blast, Stomping Tantrum, and U-Turn. The one thing that sucks about this set, and we saw this a little bit on the World Championships stream, is actually if you end up in a situation where you are out of Terra, so you don't have the option to Terra, right? And you can't hit something with Stomping Tantrum, then you're kind of in a rough spot, right? So we saw this up against actually, funnily enough, a Terra Fairy Cresselia. And U-Turn isn't very effective. Stomping Tantrum doesn't hit it because of Levitate. Terra Blast is a special move, and it was a physical attacker. Or this mon's a physical attacker primarily. Can put you in a rough spot, right? But in places where that's not the case, having Intimidate, having the really high attack stat, having the immunity to Spore, which is really helpful when you're dealing with like Terraflying Terra Blast and specific things. It's a very good Pokemon. I would expect this to be a focal point of the team when dealing with backs, but honestly, I don't see this bringing a whole lot of value besides that. Like I said before, I think the focal point is really going to be this Volcarona on this team, and unfortunately, Landorus just doesn't really have a great matchup into that. Pre-Terra, it can hit it with Terra Blast, but it's not doing a whole lot for the most part. I expect this to be left at home for most of the games today. Fluttermane doesn't have a super great matchup into Volcarona before Terraring, but it has a great matchup into Volcarona after Volcarona Terras. Terra Grass Energy Ball is super powerful. It's coming off of choice specs. I always talk about this, but I love that this set is everywhere because I've been running this set since Regulation C, and I thought it was great then, and I think it's still great now. Choice specs, Terra Grass with Energy Ball. This is my favorite Fluttermane set currently, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Super, super powerful, super consistent. Energy Ball is excellent coverage. You know, we have so much stuff tearing into water types. I'm sure that this is specifically as a counter to Urshifu because Urshifu is the most common, or one of the most common Pokemon in the format. But I really love Energy Ball, Terra Grass with choice specs, and we're seeing it again here. This is a much more standard Amoonguss. Remember, we were talking about how weird this Amoonguss is, right? This is a much more standard one. We replaced the Hex for Rage Powder. We replaced the Life Orb for Citrus Berry. This is a really interesting take on Amoonguss. This is the direct competitor, right? I'm actually excited that we get to see both of these in the same game. I want to see if the value that this Amoonguss brings with Leaf Storm and Hex and a Life Orb is worth the downside of not having the bulk from the Citrus Berry, of changing your Terra type away from water, of removing Rage Powder to redirect attacks. Like, these are big downsides you're taking on your Amoonguss. at least in the sense of like bringing value in a traditional sense. How does this affect the viability of Amoonguss? I'm really interested to see that. Iron Hands, this is again extremely consistent. Wild Charge, Volt Switch, Drain Punch, Fake Out. This is the standard set. It's Terra Water. Terra Water and Terra Grass go back and forth on which one is the most popular. I think I prefer Terra Grass, but like either is fine. You're not going to have a problem with either. And honestly, in this matchup, Terra Water does look better. So, you know, specifically, if I was going to give one of these teams an edge, I think it depends on how long the game goes. So here's my thought, right? If game goes long, I'd give the advantage to this team. If game is short, I give the advantage. Oh my god, why did it get so big? Advantage to this team. So that's my thoughts. All right, with that out of the way, I'm going to make sure I erase literally every single one of these. This is the downside of using specifically this utility, is that I don't have a good way to just erase everything. So I need to go in and like actually make sure I'm getting rid of all the things that I want to get rid of. But screen looks clear. I'm happy with that. So we will drop that out.
It looks kind of
full screen appears to be broken. Okay, there we go.
Couple things to call out here that I think are really interesting is the safety goggles Landorus with Terra Blast and the Choice Specs Terra Grass Fluttermane. I think those are both really interesting choices. But Yusei, here's the team we were talking about. So Leftovers, Quivered Ends, Volcarona paired with Grimmsnarl. We see an interesting Cresselia set with no Trick Room, but instead Helping Hand, Ally Switch, and Lunar Blessing as supportive moves. Assault Vest, Terra Fairy, Terra Blast, Baxcalibur. Not a Pokemon I've seen very often. A supportive Gyarados, a little more standard. And my personal favorite Pokemon on this team, Life Orb Amoonguss with Leaf Storm, Hex, Spore, and Protect without Rage Powder and without a poison move as well. So, yeah, Yuki, what do you make of this team? What do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much stuff on here that like we just don't see in the West too much. Like even like the Alice switch on Cresselia, like I think Japanese are kind of known for really liking that move. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, like this Amoonguss, like as crazy as it seems, like there's clearly a purpose behind it. So yeah, I'm excited to see it face off. But yeah, in terms of the matchup, I think the Gyarados looks pretty strong. Like I think both of us kind of like Gyarados this format and its ability to slow down games. And yeah, I think Shohei's team isn't necessarily hyper offense, so Gyarados might have multiple opportunities to click Thunder Wave, which will be good for not just the speed control, but also the opportunity to stop the opponent from moving, and also coupling well with the Hex on the Amoonguss.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think something that like
yeah, so they're landing on top a lot of the same points that I landed on, but they did say something that made me realize that I neglected to mention, like the real importance of Gyarados, right? Gyarados, like I said, I think if the game goes long, this team is at an extreme advantage because it is so much recovery, so much sustain. But the problem is that it's not too threatening off rip. Gyarados is Intimidate and stuff like Taunt. Stuff like Thunder Wave, just general damage with Waterfall. That is going to be so massive, right? If we end up in a situation where we're facing down a Landorus, a Chien-Pao, and Iron Hands, like we have to remember that there are 4 of the 6 Pokemon in this team are physical attackers. There's 1 special attacker and a support Pokemon. So we have 4 physicals, 1 special, and a support. And Gyarados, Intimidate, removes the ability for a lot of these things to be as effective as they want to be. This is actually also why when I build teams, I really prefer having... Also, I just realized my head was over the Urshifu the entire time, but I'll here. So you can see Surging Strikes, Aqua Jet, Protect, and Taunt. Taunt's going to be really cool against. I mean, it's going to be less cool, honestly, than normal. I think also it's interesting to think about how this Amoonguss set is sort of like a reaction to Taunt as a move and its prominence these days. So many Amoonguss sets don't have a way to deal with Taunt, so they come onto the field and you taunt them and then they don't do anything. Because they're not invested in special attack or anything. They physically cannot do anything to you. So they sit on the field or they switch out, right? And that gives you a free turn to double up onto their partner. Or attack whatever you think is coming in, if you want to make reads. And this Amoonguss on Yusei's side it feels like a reaction to that. I'm not sure how good it's going to be. I'm really excited to see it, like I said before, but that is another point to bring up. Gyarados, like I said, really hinders Shohei's team's ability to do lots of damage. Particularly, when you look at mons that can like sort of ignore intimidate, ignore reflect, ignore stat drops, I guess. Urshifu is really like the biggest one, right? Because its moves always crit. But the move that always crits is a water type move. So Volcarona post Terra does resist that and has Flame Body, which means it gets three chances to burn the Urshifu, which if the Urshifu gets burned, it's basically game over for it, I would say. Burn, for anybody who's unaware, halves the amount of damage coming from physical attacks from that Pokemon. So it does seem like Volcarona is really a reactionary choice to a lot of what's going on in the metagame. I like it quite a bit. I just like teams like this in general. I've been playing a lot of teams like this who try and support a specific mon, let it get set up, and try and sweep from there. And it's got the cool tech, so I'm personally rooting for Yusei to do well here, but I also really like that Shohei brought something standard, right? A lot of the time they were talking about in the introduction that a lot of these teams are going to be a little bit wacky, a little bit wild. And while that's really great from a spectator's perspective, right? Being able to see how it applies against something that like is a very thought out metagame, right? Like this team that Shohei's running was so common at Worlds, right? And we have one more event. I didn't think we'd have any regionals in this format, but we have another event in this format. This is really great info for anybody who's looking into anything like Yusei's team, like any of the ideas on Yusei's team. We're going to get real world top level competition information right now. So I'm super excited about that. Anyway, let's get back into it.
Even including Terra types. It's just that Life Orb Amoonguss. I guess I'm sorry, I missed that it was Terra Grass Gyarados. There are two here, and Gyarados naturally matches up pretty well into Amoonguss thanks to Taunt. But I do think that like part of this battle might be whether or not Shohei is able to get his Amoonguss into a position where it can spore without cost here. And on the other side, if Yusei is able to like do anything to mitigate that. So the battle is starting off here, and we have Iron Hands and Urshifu against Gyarados and Volcarona. This is a very.
I'm gonna drop this slightly lower. It seems like it's a little too loud on my
I
mixer.
think one of the things I like about using Urshifu is that combos very well with Fake Out. You can't really protect in front of it because of the
Okay, let's go back.
ability. Combos very. Yeah.
All right, Volcarona, Gyarados, and then we have Iron Hands, Urshifu. I would say this leads in favor of Yusei. Both of the Pokemon have Protect. They can both Protect on this turn. You can Terra to resist Urshifu, right? Like, obviously Protect, right? You're still getting hit, right, by Surging Strikes. But you can always Protect, and you can have a great time. The one thing that I'd be worried about is if Shohei decides to bypass Fake Out entirely and just go for a Wild Charge. That's going to do some pretty serious damage, though it is intimidated. I wouldn't mind seeing a Gyarados switch out and a Volcarona Terra. Like a Gyarados switch to a Amoonguss, Volcarona Terra Water, go for QD is probably what I would do. But, the pressure's coming from here. I don't think the pressure's that immense right now. I think it's a manageable amount of pressure. But the pressure's definitely coming from Shohei's side. Shohei is applying the pressure early, which is sort of what we talked about, right? Like the game goes short, Shohei wins. The game goes long, Yusei wins. So I'm excited to see what they do turn one, but I definitely feel like the pressure's coming from Shohei turn one.
And And I think one of the things I like about using Urge Foo is that it combos very well with Fake Out. You can't really protect in front of it because of the ability to hit through Protect. So I think Shohei has a pretty safe Fake Out into the Gyarados and then a Surging Strikes into the Volcarona. You definitely risk the Flame Body, which has the opportunity to burn opponents that make contact with it. But you would still sort of force Yusei to either switch out.
So you missed my like 20-minute dissertation on these teams before I started the match.
So yeah, I'm excited to see how Yusei kind of has to react. I think he's in more of the reactive position.
I totally agree. I think it's also worth noting this Volcarona.
Dude, I love how I'm like making this analysis and then they talk about it. They're just now talking about how Shohei has the upper hand currently. They're ready to apply the pressure, and that Yusei needs to be reactive. And if he makes a reactive play and it works out, then he's going to be at a huge advantage. But, like, God, I'm good at my job.
Is Terra Water, so the combination of Wild Charge and Surging Strikes would result in a KO in the Volcarona regardless. So
okay, so he does Terra the Volcarona. This is kind of what I expected to see. Faking out into the Volcarona is really a big risk for Iron Hands because you could end up getting burned and just cutting your damage output for the rest of the game. It's AV Iron Hands. It has no ways to boost up and avoid the damage from the burn. If he does read this, right? If he does read this, and double attacks into the, or I guess even if he like taunts. Okay, so QD happens first, so we know that taunt wouldn't be effective anyway. But no fake out. I expect a wild charge to head into either slot. The really nice thing about switching in Cresselia here is that both of the Pokemon punish physical attackers for attacking. And if you remember from when I was doing like that big analysis thing at the early part of the match, almost everything on Shohei's team is a physical attacker. 4 of his 6 Pokemon are physical attackers. He only has 1 special attacker and 1 support Pokemon. So, you know, if you're in a situation where you're punishing people for attacking you with physical attackers, you're always going to be good if all they're bringing is physical attackers, right? So, we didn't see the fake out early because the fake out was risky. And both of the Pokemon happen to punish physical attackers. I think this is a really great reactive play from Yusei. I like it a lot. Intimidate's already down. So we're in a situation where these Pokemon aren't going to be dealing nearly as much damage unless Shohei goes for Surging Strikes. But again, Surging Strikes gets really, really hard punished from either of these Pokemon, right? Flame Body gets 3 chances to proc a burn. Rocky Helmet does about 50% of his HP if he attacks into the Cresselia. So, love the play from Yusei. We'll see how Shohei reacts to this. The taunt going into the Cresselia is nice. I'm not sure if it really matters. You know, Volcarona already got the Quiver Dance off. The threat is already approaching, and Cresselia can just switch it back out into Gyarados next turn and sit another Intimidate down. So, I feel like, we talked about Shohei exerting pressure and Yusei being in a reactive position. Yusei predicted the turn pretty well here, and is unless this is a wild charge that like does insane damage into this Volcarona from the Iron Hands, he's kind of in a bad spot now.
No, we see a taunt over to the Cresselia. Pretty safe move because Gyarados probably didn't want to click Waterfall here. But we see the Volt Switch.
Okay, Volt Switch, that's fine. It does 30 damage.
Yeah, so I like that play from Shohei, and I think Yusei took a bit of a risk, but it ended up paying off there. You figure, like, okay, well, Surging Strikes doesn't do much to Gyarados, and if Volcarona Terras to Water, then, I mean, like, you'd actually rather not click Surging Strikes there because of the Flame Body, like we mentioned. And Iron Hands using Wild Charge can just be a little committal. It also, I believe, can activate the Flame Body. I'm fairly certain that's a contact move. So, going for
as Wolf is talking about, Wild Charge into the Volcarona would have been the best read to counteract this situation, but it's a really difficult read to make. It's very committal. You guaranteed take recoil damage, and you have a chance to burn yourself too. And as far as I remember, actually I have the team sheet. I'll double check it, but I don't believe Shohei has any way to boost his damage output. So we're in a situation where this is Shohei's team. No way to boost the damage output on either of those Pokemon. So if they get burned, they're pretty crippled for the rest of the game.
Here, I think that Wild Charge could have been higher reward, but also was higher risk there, especially if you're not using Surging Strikes, excuse me. But Volcarona now.
All right, we see Fluttermane come back in. Fluttermane is the thing that I was highlighting earlier. First of all, right, it's the only special attacker on Shohei's team, but it also has Terragrass Energy Ball, which could be a really good move to throw into the Volcarona slot right now. But of course, like you can protect the Volcarona. Like there's so many ways to get around it. And Volcarona might even be faster than Fluttermane at this point. If Fluttermane goes for Terra Grass and gets red, a Heat Wave will do pretty absurd damage to it, I think. We know that Cresselia can't really do anything other than Moonblast this turn. Moonblast does still threaten Urshifu. And I don't think Urshifu really wants to attack into either of these Pokemon right now because both of them are going to punish it for attacking them. So I wouldn't mind seeing an Urshifu switch out right now. I think it's actually pretty threatened by the opposing Pokemon. Not necessarily with like upfront damage, but like what does it do in this situation, right? I don't really see what it does. One thing you could do if you wanted to be super committal, I don't really like this, but you could do it, right? Is you double attack into the Volcarona. I think that's really risky. If you get a Flame Body proc early, especially because Volcarona has already boosted special defense with Quiver Dance, like I don't know. It seems super risky, right? And like I said, Volcarona still has access to protect. You can always protect, get Eternal Leftovers recovery, potentially burn your Urshifu anyway because your Urshifu attacks through protect. And then you have a situation where you probably had to Terra if you wanted to do a ton of damage into this Volcarona, due to it already boosting a special defense, right? And then you're in a position where it's like you probably get outsped and you get hit by the fire move that's on the Volcarona. So super, super risky. It's a really rough spot. We're already seeing like the kind of point that I was making where the game goes longer. Like the longer this game goes on, the harder it is for Shohei to beat Yusei's team.
And has Bug Buzz. That's still a lot of damage onto an Urshifu that's not really well known for being bulky on the special side. So I would definitely say that Yusei really turned things around. Like he was kind of on the back foot from the lead, but with this Volcarona being able to potentially outspeed this Fluttermane over on Shohei's side, I think he can go for a pretty strong attack without risking too much damage in return.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the interesting thing is what he's going to do with Cresselia here because it is...
River dancing again. Ooh, spicy. All right, so Yusei's bringing in the backs. This is fine. I probably would have preferred to bring in the Urshifu, or not the Urshifu, the Gyarados, but this is fine. QD doubles QD, gets hit by the energy ball, but it's super boosted, right? I don't think that's going to do a whole lot. Yeah. Surging Strikes goes into Volcarona. It doesn't kill, and it has potential to burn. Yep, burns turn 1. Burns hit 1. Alright, so it's going to take even less damage. Super good turn for Yusei. He can always protect, right? He can always protect. He's +2, special attack, special defense, and speed. Faster than everything. Can probably one-shot most stuff. This Volcarona is about to go nuclear.
You take a lot of damage with Volcarona, and the energy ball does so much damage. However, pays off in a major way here. Not only is your Volcarona alive, not only is it threatening a ton of damage into this Fluttermane now with +2, you got the burn on the Urshifu. So Volcarona, a Pokemon that we haven't seen that much of this series, is kind of dominating this battle right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think...
now, that being said, Volcarona is in a position where, like, if it takes too much more damage, you're in a really bad spot, right? But I don't think you're really going to be in a situation where you end up taking that damage. I don't know the calcs on this Fluttermane, right? I don't know if this Fluttermane dies. And they didn't Terra, so it's harder for Yusei to punish. But, I don't know.
Fluttermane can't protect, so he has a free attack into that slot. So I would like to see how Yusei...
Yeah, I do like the protect here. Turns out that the play that I was thinking of, going for like Heat Wave, would have actually been probably better. But Lando comes in, hits the Intimidate on the back's Caliber. It doesn't really matter for the Volcarona. See, the problem that I'm seeing here right now is, how do you deal with this Volcarona? Like, seriously, how do you deal with it?
I mean, it doesn't do that much damage at the end of the day.
It's still going to be alive.
Although Volcarona looks like it's taking about 13 damage per hit here. It's going to go to 20, yes, so Volcarona's going to be low.
So Volcarona can't protect again, but it wasn't going to protect again anyway. Glaive Rush goes into the Urshifu. Yeah, Glaive Rush did a ton. I think now you can pretty reliably... you can reliably just start throwing out Heat Waves. The only thing that can stop Yusei from going, like, absolutely fucking nutty right now is a Heat Wave miss.
super effective and just knocked out Landorus right there. But Yusei ends up attacking the Urshifu, which is already burned. So now I think it might be in the range of Heat Wave. And in combination with Ice Shard, he's definitely threatening a double KO. So Shohei needs to react.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think like the interesting thing is this Landorus' Terra flying, which like will reduce the damage.
Yeah, that second QD was really interesting in the sense that like it's a huge risk, huge payoff. But we can see how much that risk puts him into a weird spot, right? Like he is potentially dead, right? And if he dies here, if his Ooh. Oh, I like this a lot. This is an excellent play. So this is punishment. This is punishment for the. Oh my God! Gets the burn on the hands.
That is massive. Iron Hands is a really difficult Pokemon to remove, and to be honest, like this Urshifu doesn't have a fighting move, and it's already burnt. So how is Shohei going to get rid of this Baxcalibur? I mean, it does so much damage to Lander.
Okay, so we know that it does about 36. Urshifu does about 36 roughly with Surging Strikes through Protect right now. So I think Volcarona can actually protect and chill. But yeah,
I think your point still stands from earlier though, that regardless of the burn, like the fake out damage and the surging strikes can probably still.
I would like to see a crest switch. I'd like to see a crest switch, and then you. Let me just work through some thoughts real quick. So first of all, we're gonna bring up Photoshop because I have this little thing here. We're gonna do some drawing. We're gonna do some drawing chat. This is me jingling keys in front of my audience. We're gonna do some drawing chat. We're gonna do some drawing. Right, how Shohei attempted to punish it, and it would have worked. It would have worked in most cases, right? How Shohei attempted to punish this double quiver is that he brought Volcarona down to, I want to say, like 30-ish HP. Right? And Urshifu, up here, despite being burned, can hit through Protect. Through Protect, so can hit through Protect for about 36. Right? So what he was going to do was to, like, so how do you get out of this, right? You have to kill the Urshifu. The Baxcalibur on this side was not fast enough to kill this Urshifu. Because its only move that is fast enough to hit this was Ice Shard, and Ice Shard is not enough damage to kill the Urshifu. So he brings in Hands over here. Iron Hands. And Iron Hands can fake out. So basically he was trying to put this Volcarona lock. Iron Hands can fake out, which forces the Protect, right? Surging goes through Protect, does 36-ish, and this has about 30-ish HP. Breaks through Protect, kills the Volcarona, which is the big threat. So that's what he was trying to do to set up like a pin situation and end up taking out the Volcarona. Because at the end of the day, if he can remove this Volcarona, he's actually in an excellent spot. Most of his stuff is relatively undamaged. You know, at the time, but while he was thinking of making this play, Iron Hands wasn't burned. There was a great way to get back into this, right? Because if you can remove this Volcarona, Baxcalibur is weak to Iron Hands, you Drain Punch this, you get all your HP back, Hands is back to full. Still a really threatening attacker. We had Gyarados and Cresselia in the back, which themselves aren't going to do really enough damage to remove a lot of the threats on Shohei's team. So this was an excellent play to try and take the momentum back. Unfortunately, when he switches it in, it gets hit by the burn, and Volcarona actually healed out of range of the Urshifu anyway, so this fake out pin wouldn't have worked. And like currently does not work. But this was the game plan, right? This was the game plan. Very good game plan. I think it's the only way for him to get back into the game. Like I said, unfortunately it didn't work. I think this game's probably over now as a result.
So at the same time, Shohei's the world champion here. Like he is under. Your point still.
Fluttermane as well. So that's a
we'll move back a little bit.
Doing enormous damage to one of Shohei's best.
So we see Yusei's turn happening here, right?
Is on fire.
Actually,
Yusei,
But
Yusei,
yeah, so
if I remember right,
so
decides
some
to
those
switch
burn,
out to
like,
Cresselia, which I think is really good, right?
strikes.
The big thing
Also
that's
knock off
keeping
the
this Volcarona from just like
Volcarona.
taking over the
So
game
I think Yusei's
for
still
sure
under a
is
bit.
is
So
the
with
lack of
the
HP on it right
attack,
now.
Shohei's
And
the one champion here. Like, he
Yusei can
might
bring
not
in
necessarily
Cresselia
block
and
the
start
favorite.
running Lunar
So
Blessings
you're
to
right.
give you more
Interesting. Yeah,
HP.
totally.
So I really like the Cresselia switch. I think a Protect and switch to Cresselia is the best move that he has this turn. You can always, on the turn after the Fake Out, go ahead and kill the Urshifu, and then your Cresselia is probably faster than their hands, meaning that you can...
Surging strikes, I think that is incredible, but Shohei also reads that.
But you can...
Really interesting. I mean, it might have been a case where
because your Cresselia outspeeds the hands, you can always reliably get the heal off, right? So I think that was like an excellent move.
I don't know if +2 helping hand heat wave will pick up the KO because it's still at full HP.
This could just come down to one of those things where it depends on how the trainers train their Pokemon, right? The Flutter Mane is just really all about the speed, all about the attack.
Yeah, so the one limiting factor that they're talking about on stream right now is how strong is this Volcarona actually? How much special attack does it have? It's at +2, so it's double its base, right? Double the base that it had when it came into the battle. But what is that base? And is that base strong enough to remove this Flutter Mane? If it's not, this gets really interesting.
Like, it's not that valuable, and Fake Out actually has some use here. Arshu does come in here. The thing is that
We do see the Helping Hand. Helping Hand Heat Wave is probably my guess. They're not going to go for Bug Buzz here. Bug Buzz is resisted. Double connects. Removes the Flutter Mane's, game over. Great job from Yusei. Made a bunch of risky plays, but they all ended up paying off. Played right on the edge the entire game, right? Like, as we talked about earlier, it does about 36 to Protect. Volcarona was always hovering right around like 40-ish, 44, all of those places. Very dangerous life totals for this Volcarona. If this Volcarona goes down, this game is over in Shohei's favor. But instead, we see him towing the line as perfectly as you possibly can, avoiding pins, making smart switches. And now he's in a position where he just wins the game. It's over.
A little bit more bulky, like you would see it on Dozo, sometimes like on Ting Lu, that can really take a lot of hits. And
That's a Space Goose? Yeah, Cresselia is definitely a Space Goose.
You can just see like it's really paying off dividends.
I think that's my favorite way anybody's described that Pokemon, actually.
Decades ago, if it weren't for that item.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what's interesting here is that
The Protect again, I think the Protect just makes so much sense here. You get an extra turn of recovery. I would go Protect and Lunar Blessing if I was Yusei to just sort of lock this one up. You're not going to die to either of these, obviously, if you Protect. They're not killing your Cresselia this turn. I think if you're Shohei, you have to kind of predict that it's going to go for Protect and Fake Out into Cresselia, but if you don't, like, I don't think you're bringing it back anyway. This Landorus is not fast enough to kill you. This Iron Hands is not fast enough to kill you.
Fake Out. So
So we have
Yeah.
Fake Out going into the Volcarona, being blocked by
He's shown that he's willing to go for Protects. I don't think there's ever really a situation where Shohei can come back from this.
Going to survive. Let's see what it retaliates with.
Yep, goes for Lunar Blessing. Yeah, this is exactly what I mentioned before the turn. We end up healing up the Volcarona, and it's just over, right?
It's
just over.
Let's not forget that even if Volcarona went down, there is still the
I actually also really like, so I really enjoy running Giga Drain on my Volcarona sets, but you don't really need it on this team with Yusei because he's running leftovers, he's got screens, he's got Cresselia with Lunar Blessing, he's compensating for this lack of recovery in the moveset of Volcarona with recovery in the moveset of every other Pokemon, recovery and defensive utility in the moveset of every other Pokemon on his team.
Come back is to read this switch and wild charge the
Yeah.
Cresselia slot.
I'm not sure Shohei has a great way of making this Volcarona die, but I would like to see an adjustment of a Moongus game too. Terrawater Moongus, because Volcarona is not running Giga Drain, actually looks like a pretty interesting option in terms of like putting it to sleep, right? Like, how do you deal with this? You put it to sleep.
It's a miss on the Landorus.
So,
That's probably fine. I mean,
you know,
Landorus is not
it's
gonna 1 against 4 is my impression at -1 attack.
yeah, this game's over. They're talking about the game and how the miss, but like it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if you kill this Volcarona. It does not matter. This game's super over. But having a Moongus to put this Volcarona to sleep, because Volcarona is vulnerable in both its pre and post Terra states.
It took a Terra Blast. It took multiple surging strikes.
could be really good for you.
Urshifu, and it still is
Like an
staying
Iron Hands Amoonguss lead would be really nice. Your one issue for Shohei in terms of bringing it is that you don't have a great answer to this Gyarados. It has Taunt. It'll taunt your Amoonguss. If you let that go off, your Amoonguss can't do anything. But if you can prevent the Gyarados from either being on the field at the same time as the Amoonguss or being able to move that turn through Fake Out from Iron Hands, you're in a great position to put this to sleep. As soon as you put this to sleep, it gives you extra time to deal with this Pokemon. There's still counterplay, right? Cresselia's Lunar Blessing can remove status. It could remove the status of sleep that's currently on the Volcarona in that case, and then allow Volcarona to just continue doing its thing, right? But
I actually really like the lead. To be
this
honest.
is
Like, I think Urshifu and Iron Hands applied a ton of pressure, especially with that surging strike.
this is a pretty rough matchup, it seems. You know, like I was talking about,
Pretty much though, because if Cresselia switches in,
Yusei's team has so many things that punish physical attackers for attacking. And Shohei has 4 physical attackers, right? I always like to build my attackers as 2 and 2 at the very least, and this is why. And I don't think this is like the end all be all of team building, right? But I enjoy doing it, and this kind of matchup is exactly why. I do think Yusei had a really great meta read, though. Like, if you look at the most used Pokemon, almost all of them are physical attackers. Almost all the common partners are physical attackers. Almost all the common, like, support Pokemon, if you can even call them that. Like, you know, Iron Hand supports you with Fake Out. Landorus supports you with Intimidate. Both really powerful physical attackers. So having stuff that hard punishes physical attackers is really, really, really good this format. I love the meta read he made. I love Volcarona being used in the first place. You know, if you've been watching this channel for a while, that Viv and I have been using the Volcarona set that they made up for a bit. I think that's really good too. Having Flame Body and having Destructive Power are very good. I think if Heatran didn't always want to run Flash Fire because it's such an amazing ability, Flame Body Heatran would be crazy too. But burns are so powerful, and we don't really have a great Will-O-Wisper right now.
Iron Hands that don't have Heavy Slam, and actually,
So Flame Body is like our biggest way to get
I would
burns.
have loved to see a Moongus here, but it looks like, I mean, Baxcalibur is also really good. I think I incorrectly mentioned that it could Terra Teferi after Volcarona had already terrestrialized. That's my bad. What's it called? Like,
So we'll see how Shohei adapts. He's definitely on the back foot, right? We saw Yusei execute his game plan, and he executed it basically perfectly and won the game in a very convincing fashion. So how does Shohei show up differently for this game? All right, so we bring Fluttermane, we bring Urshifu. I wouldn't mind seeing. I wouldn't mind seeing a double up into Volcarona. I'm talking about Surging Strikes and Energy Ball. That's what he attempted to bring later in the game after the Quiver Dances, try and deal with his Volcarona. Now he can do it to frame 1, right? And like I said, this Yusei's team is all about Volcarona. If you remove Volcarona, it is significantly less powerful. Bax is the secondary threat, but it is nowhere near as destructive as this Volcarona, right? So you have to, like, you have to be in a situation where you can kill the Volcarona or stop it from setting up. And he's in a much better position to do so now. This Bax will take this pretty well. Resists the Surging Strikes. He was probably expecting an Energy Ball as well, which Bax also resists. But, you know, should be fineable. Waterfall does really great damage here from the Gyarados. Again, you know, like, I think Baxcalibur is a secondary threat, but I honestly don't think it's that important. I wouldn't mind seeing an Ice Shard into this Fluttermane right now. We do know that this Fluttermane is Choice Specs, so it can't protect. Yeah, Ice Shard into this feels okay. You're not living another Shadow Ball, so it's like, you're not living another Shadow Ball, and there's nothing in the back that you want to switch into this Shadow Ball. So I think you have to keep the Bax in. It's just, how does Gyarados navigate this turn? Bax is here as fodder. What does Gyarados do? You can see Gyarados go for an attack into the Fluttermane, but I feel like that's pretty obvious. Yeah, we see the withdrawal. I would have really liked to see, probably just because I think this was threatened, an attack into, or like a Thunder Wave into the Urshifu. But it ends up being fine. Surging Strike should pick this up, I believe. If it doesn't, it's going to be low enough that Fake Out kills. Yeah, it takes it.
So close.
And now we have Fake Out Pressure into this Gyarados, right? But we don't have the Volcar, or we don't have the Flutter Mane on the field anymore. Oh, he does hit the phone. I thought he went for Waterfall into the Iron Hand slot. So he does go for the Thunder Wave into the Urshifu. That's a great play. It does mean that you can't lower the attack output of the Urshifu, but it also means that Urshifu is much slower. So you can actually reliably, I think, bring in, Cresselia here and start going for stuff like Moonblast into the Urshifu. It's super effective. The only way to deal with it is to Terra your Urshifu, but if you really want to Terra something that's paralyzed, you know? So it's a very big investment to sink into this Urshifu if you want it to live. And Shohei needs to decide whether or not that's worth it. I would say without forcing the Terra on the Volcarona yet, it's probably worth keeping around. But what else does he bring in here, you know?
There's nothing that wants his vision for Wild Charge and Surging Strikes. So, interesting. Well, you don't have to switch in if you can just switch where your Pokemon are standing on the field. I forgot about the ally switch here. Here comes Cresselia.
This goes for the ally switch. This is something we could have seen last game as a way to try and make sure that the Volcarona doesn't get hit, but this is actually fine too. Waterfall does some pretty good damage, does bait the Wild Charge into the Cresselia slot, so we're going to see some Rocky Helmet damage on that side, and a Survival, whereas Gyarados would have been obliterated. Hits the Taunt into the Cresselia as well. I think that was probably like some just coverage options, right? If you don't switch, if you don't ally switch, then this covers it, but if you do ally switch, so on and so forth. As well as if you decide to bring in Volcarona in that slot, and tank it and go for the burn, tank the Wild Charge and go for the burn on Iron Hands, then you're also in a position where you stop it from Quiver Dancing. So I actually like that play. Urshifu is not providing a whole lot of value right now into this board state. I think really the only other thing that you can do if you want to, yeah, Moonblast does great damage. Waterfall, I think, does over 50. No, it doesn't. Why did they do so much before? I feel like it did a lot more before. Volt Switch does a ton of damage. Not going for the Wild Charge. I think that's fine. If you go for the Wild Charge, then you're in a position where you die. You die from the recoil. So I don't mind that play at all. He's really far behind, Shohei is. Like, everything is so damaged, right? And you only really need, like, one Quiver Dance from this Volcarona to kind of just take this game at this point. It's just like, what do you do in this case to try and like claw your way back as Shohei? And I honestly don't know. I don't think there's a way back in. I think Yusei, Shohei applied a ton more pressure this way, but he still just lost out to the sustain of this team. The Thunder Wave onto this Urshifu is actually such a big deal. I don't think I've properly conveyed how like massive that is. But yeah. Oh, the reason I thought Waterfall did more is because he hit Flutter Mane earlier and did over half. I'm stupid.
Thinking about it here, also that Urshifu is so bulky, not getting 2-hit KO'd by a super effective special Moonblast. Oh, we are going to see a Terra here.
Oh, wow.
Will we see the attack go off, though? Just barely gets it in time. Oh, Urshifu switching out here.
Urshifu switches out and brings in the hands.
Maybe sacrificing it?
Oh, never mind. He still has 4 Pokemon. I thought one of his had died.
That's another way to live the waterfall.
So yeah, he might end up living the Waterfall with Flutter Mane. He super lives the Waterfall if he Terras.
I can't tell which player that is. It is Cresselia, so the Terrestrial, that makes sense with Landorus because you do really want to preserve it for Landorus' Terra Blast here. That also means that Volcarona, who was such a powerful Pokemon last game.
Oh, but he goes for a Shadow Ball.
This is Shadow Ball into the Gyarados.
Oh,
it killed?
Big KO. Gyarados is so specially bulky, I would imagine.
I am shocked.
And an amazing play from Shohei. It felt like, honestly, Shohei was kind of...
I am shocked. Okay, so that changes just about everything, honestly. We're in a position where that turn, because I didn't realize that, the Gyarados was even in danger. just totally swung in the favor of Shohei. Shohei, I think, is in control now.
And I think
Um,
it made the Shohei's decision making a lot easier. I think the shadow ball into that slot was pretty safe in my
you know,
opinion.
you're in a position where it's like,
with the Volcarona switch, it would take a lot of damage. So
because this Landorus can go for the Terra flying Terra Blast, right? So Landorus covers it pre-Terra, and actually it can't Terra anymore. So Landorus just kills this Volcarona, I think.
Type to do Terra Blast while the Volcarona can't necessarily do that. I'm not sure if the taunt has worn off already.
I think there's one more turn left, but I could be
Volcarona can protect, but I don't see what Cresselia is doing that protects Volcarona enough here.
Get one shot by Terra Fairy Moonblast. So if he can just find a way through these front Pokemon, like if Volcarona outspeeds these two and like Heatwave picks, oh, we're running out of time.
Oh no.
Moonblast and Protect goes through, I think. We are going to see
Yes,
the Terastallization.
yes, I think so.
So yeah, this should be on the Landorus for sure.
The translation on the Landorus, so potentially Shohei going for the double up into the Cresselia, getting rid of it before it has any more opportunities to ally switch or helping hand. But Yusei might respect that and still attack with the Volcarona.
Oh, it didn't go through. He timed out.
Oh no.
Oh, what a critical hit. Volcarona going for Heatwave though. Oh, it doesn't pick up the KO. We're gonna burn. No burn.
And the Terra Blast goes into
the
Cresselia.
Goes into Cresselia.
Oh my goodness, it's possible. It's possible for, with a paralysis, Volcarona to win this match because it outspeeds Landorus. So if another Heatwave goes off, like,
Oh my god, the miss input.
it's totally possible for Volcarona
So
to pick up
the
KO
input
share.
dropping actually
Yes,
brought him back into this game.
yeah,
Shohei made the read that Protect was going to happen. Yusei went for Protect, but it didn't go through, so Heatwave happened.
Paralysis, like,
And
it's
now he's in a
possible.
position to win the
Volcarona's
game.
speed being- this
That's
Volcarona feels like it has
insane.
max special attack, max speed, and max HP.
So we see Shadow Ball come through. This won't kill.
seeing that he can definitely
Yeah, even on crit, this doesn't kill.
100% chance to win.
Heatwave needs to double connect.
That's gonna seal it up, I think. Who does it connect on?
It connects on the Flutter this Silver.
To be
Okay.
honest, it was gonna be really difficult here. You would have needed probably.
Shohei adjusted really beautifully, honestly. I don't know why I thought he had lost a Pokemon.
In the timeout, they're almost saving Yusei, or at least giving them a chance back.
But yeah, I think the Terra on Cresselia, like it seemed great in the moment. So here's one thing, right, that I think happens to a lot of people. The Terra on Cresselia seemed super great in the moment. Also, hi Julian. Oh, this is Zoom. I want this to be brush size. Okay, so the Terra on Cresselia, right, seems better in the moment, right? Because we have Urshifu here, and it's at like it's like roughly 55%. Oh my god. 55% roughly, all right? And this is just Moonblasted this from 100%. So this Moonblast did like 45-ish. Cresselia Moonblast did like 45-ish. So if you Terra this, if you Terra Fairy, then you're actually in a position where your Moonblast gets boosted and it kills. But this is a cautionary tale on getting too excited and doing stuff like out of turn, right? Doing this robs your Volcarona of Terra and makes it basically impossible for your Volcarona to beat Landorus in the end game. There's mind games up until that point with your Volcarona. Remember that I was talking about the Volcarona as like the big piece, right? So the mind games are that Shadow Ball, or that Energy Ball, or sorry. Oh my god, I need to lower this brush size too. So mind games are that, we'll remove this, because we already talked about this. So the mind games are that your Lando has Terra Flying, Terra Blast, and this is super effective let's fix that P. Pre-Volk Terra. And you have Fluttermane with Energy Ball. which is super effective post Volk Terra. So you have these mind games, right? While you still have Terra available. You no longer have those anymore once Caress Terras. And you get rewarded really heavily, I think, if he decides to keep Urshifu in. Well, I guess only semi-heavily, right? Because Urshifu needs to break through paralysis and then hit his surging strikes, and then if he attacks your Cresselia, he dies to recoil anyway. And we saw the Shadow Ball into the Gyarados that turn as well, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. So it was the switch out the Urshifu, Shadow Ball into the Gyarados. I think it's always just better to attack into, like if you really want it dead, double attack into the Urshifu. It has to break through paralysis to hurt you. The only way that you get punished for that is attacking Shadow Ball into the Gyarados, killing, and then getting attacked by the Urshifu with surging into Cresselia. But even in that case, right, it dies to recoil. So I don't think this Terra Fairy was necessary. I think you're totally happy to let it rock if they just decide to attack you here with Fluttermane. Even if your Cresselia dies, your Gyarados picks up the KO here, and then this attacks here, I think you're still in a better spot. So I really don't like the Terra usage here. I think it removes the mind games of Volcarona, makes it much less safe in the endgame. We saw that Lando's Terraflying Blast just obliterated it in the endgame. I'm not sure there was a way to come back from the spot that they were in. But I think tearing the Cresselia instead of saving it for the Volcarona removed any chance that they had to come back. I just don't think the Cresselia was worth enough in terms of progressing the game state to keep alive. If that makes sense. I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. But I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick and grab another beverage because I'm talking a lot and I'm destroying my voice. Thank you for your compliments on my drawing, Zombo. I really appreciate it. But yeah, I definitely think not saving it for the Volcarona. Like, we talked about it at the beginning of the day. Like, Volcarona is this team. This team is Volcarona. Make sure your Volk stays alive. That's the entire point. Cresselia is not winning the game on its own. Cresselia exists specifically to support the rest of the team. Cresselia does not do enough damage on his own to actually be a big enough threat to sweep this team. Like, it just can't. So you should basically always be in a position to allow your other Pokemon to do the work for you. Especially if you're down a Pokemon, you know that they still have 4 left. Like, there's just no reason to try and hang on to that Cress IMO. Should have let it drop. Save the Terra for the Volcarona. Again, not sure if you would have won anyway, but should have let it drop. Saved it for Volk. Anyway, beverage time. I'll be back. All right, we're back, skis. Beverage required. I poured some honey down my throat too, so hopefully that's better for my throat. And we will be able to finish this shit out because this is only game 1. And we're in a double elimination bracket. Oh my god. I'm gonna have so much talking to do. So what's up, Dave? Yeah, I haven't watched it. And I'm just going back and doing analysis on it now. So this is my first time watching it, but also we're doing analysis. I plan to split this stream up over time and put it on YouTube. But before I post anything, I am going to get in touch with, the runners of the people that ran the tournament. I want to make sure that it's okay with them if I put this on YouTube. I don't think they're going to have any issues with some rando doing VOD analysis on Twitch, but I definitely do want to respect their wishes.
I don't know about you, Yuki, but feels like to me the pivotal
But,
term was
yeah.
like terastallization to fairy on the Cresselia. I feel like if Volcarona had been able to go
We're doing
back
some
to, like, Fairy
hardcore
Princess,
analysis.
it might have been a different story, but yeah, also really well disciplined by Shohei to save
Luminites, if you remember them,
like,
they came in.
I mentioned
They
it,
came in
oh,
here
Terastallized Fluttermane,
right at the beginning.
recognizing I have Landers in the back,
This is
and
game
using
one,
that
yes.
for later, feels very important.
Well, match one. That was game
Parts
2 of
Landers
match
that makes
1.
it really hard to use is the fact that your damage output gets significantly affected by whether you can terastallize it or not. So
Oh, they're still here, actually. But they came in right away, and they were like, wow, we are studying. I was like, yes, that is what we're doing today.
World champion this year, knows how to
The drawing tablet has made me able to do so much more stuff that I wanted to do.
Terastallization in the early game, so I thought that was really impressive. And yeah, I think both players can definitely be adjusting here. We might see the Amoonguss that you're biting.
I hope so. We're hovering Grimmsnarl at the moment, which would be interesting as well. I mean,
I actually really like Grimmsnarl here. You know, we saw this work without Grimmsnarl previously in game 1. Like this entire team is Volcarona. I keep making that point because it's so important to understand about this team, right? This is a very different approach to so many other teams that like try and add a bunch of good stuff and then they win off each Pokemon's individual merits. This is not like that. This is Volcarona is a good Pokemon. I am going to let it boost and kill everything. That's what this team does. And everything else in this team is designed to remove a couple checks and then go crazy with everything else to remove a couple checks and then go crazy support-wise with everything else. So you get your screens, you get your healing, you get your ally switch, you get your intimidate, and you get your spore. That's what all of it's about. I do like the Amoonguss as like a switch up. Life Orb Leaf Storm is actually going to do some pretty serious damage, and it's a good counter to a lot of like water types, bulky water types. Yeah, definitely think it's a cool set.
The two Pokemon I probably want to fight the least is Grimmsnarl are Fluttermane and Urshifu, and that was the lead from Shohei last game. Like both Pokemon, especially with choice specs, threatening a ton. So I'm curious whether or not Yusei intends to parting shot or.
I think as Yusei, I'm perfectly fine with seeing an Urshifu. You know, Wolf was talking about it being a potential problem seeing an Urshifu Fluttermane lead, but I think I'm perfectly fine seeing an Urshifu Fluttermane lead off rip because like you set up reflect or light screen, right? Probably light screen so that you live on your Grimmsnarl side. And then you just sit there with your Volcarona, right? You probably like a Terra and then go for a Quiver Dance, right? You don't take a whole lot of damage from the Urshifu. It only has water type moves and it can't really hurt you. It risks every time it attacks you getting burned, right? And the light screen protects you from a ton of the damage from the Fluttermane. We've seen that Shohei wins by removing the Volcarona, and like it's just so much better to Ursh does one-shot Grim, but it doesn't matter if Ursh is not attacking your Volcarona. The win con is the Volcarona. I don't care what happens to the Grimmsnarl. It is there to take a hit and make the Volcarona bulkier. So I think I would be perfectly fine seeing that on lead.
But it's not the same. It's actually Landorus and Fluttermane this
And honestly, I like this one a little bit less. I don't really like the Lando lead.
This time, so threatening the big damage already. I think I can definitely see him using it as a pivot, especially since it got into.
How does CC do? It doesn't matter. This one's not running CC.
And yeah, the Fluttermane's really exerting a lot of pressure. The only thing is that
so this Urshifu is running Aqua Jet, Surging Strikes, Taunt, and Protect. So because of that, and because Yusei knows this, right? Because Yusei knows it, I don't see any world where you're upset seeing that lead if you lead Grim Volk. I think you're perfectly fine with it.
Potential on Shohei's side for turn 1, so Grimmsnarl can definitely get off a screen if it wanted to, and the Gyarados can definitely get off.
They can taunt Volk, but Volk is faster than Urshifu. It's easy to be faster than this Urshifu, so it will always get one off.
So I'm curious to see if an Iron Hands could switch in. That's a pretty safe switch in here. at the expense of not being able to damage.
Yeah, I think that's a great switch. It's so tempting to go for an offensive attack here with your Fluttermane in front of the Grimmsnarl, but yeah, the Iron Hand switch in.
I like bringing Enhance here. I don't think there's any really reason to not bring it in, and it allows you to go for fake out pressure. You know, a lot of what we're trying to see that removes this Volcarona or these other threats are just pins, you know, and the fake out is essential for that. You know, faking out is essential for pinning these Pokemon.
I mean, getting a burn would be massive.
I think bringing Cresselia right here is actually pretty good. I don't feel super threatened by this, especially after the Intimidate right at the beginning. So we're in a position where like it's probably fine regardless. It is the U-turn. Oh my god, is this gonna get burned? No burn. Okay. So that would have been disastrous if you got burned, right?
Kind of close, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, I think that was right from Yusei. I mean, you get like if you get the burn there, the game becomes significantly easier. We saw Landers clean up last time, and yeah, because like basically there's only a couple physical attackers. Oh, I guess actually.
God, I need to talk so fast to keep up with the actual action. Sorry. What's the relation between those two statements? What two statements did I say? Because I'm talking so fast that I'm like bouncing between thoughts here. And it's probably going to be really bad for not only the people in the stream right now, but anybody in the YouTube video. So let me run that. Oh, Zombles. My favorite Pokemon is Charizard. My favorite food is glue. That's Timmy from Ohio. Scott Glaza said that at the World Championships. It's the best meme to come out of the World Championships. He's like, you know, it's so much different than playing at your regional where your round one opponent is Timmy from Ohio and his favorite Pokemon is Charizard and his favorite food is glue. So good. Yeah, that's an actual quote.
Shohei's been bringing 3 physical attackers here. We're getting a burn on one of them when the Urshifu with you Terrasilize.
Yeah, burn on that would have been insane. Volcarona is like positioned so well against his team. Because again, I want to stress this. Again. Shohei's team has 4 physical attackers. Shohei's team has 4 physical attackers, right? And you have so many Pokemon that punish physical attacking. Volcarona punishes it with Flame Body. Cresselia punishes it with Rocky Helmet. Gyarados punishes it with Intimidate. You know, like Grimmsnarl potentially punishes it with Reflect. There's so many Mons in the standard cores right now that are physical attackers, and that's why Chien-Pao is getting so much use, right? Because it boosts so many things. But it's so difficult to beat something when they specifically counterattack against you. Now, would this team have a lot more trouble against like a bunch of special attackers? Yeah, but nobody's running those. You know, I'd like to bring it back a little bit to like the original team that I was considering running for Regulation C. It was basically foolproof against physical attackers, the physical attackers of the early meta, because I would run Mischievous next to Wo-Chien. Mischievous would never die because of Wo-Chien's boosts, or Wo-Chien's defense or attack drops, and then it would Will-O-Wisp other stuff, so then it would die even less. And you'd win through just like not taking any damage after a little while. But running into special attackers actually made that lead, like that lead suffered so much more against special attackers. Strong, fast special attackers would rip that team apart before you could actually like start controlling the game. But, you know, in this same vein, Yusei's team is really, it has so much physical attacker hate, and he's running into a lot of physical attackers. So I think this matchup and probably this tournament, I would have to guess, are going to be pretty good matchups for him. I think it was a great meta call to bring such a team loaded with so much hatred for these physical attackers. Bringing that to this was an excellent call.
Switch here, and you know, funnily enough, this is kind of the
exact same position as the game 1.
Exactly, including like yes, Iron Hands hasn't been intimidated, or like yes, Urshifu hasn't been intimidated, but Iron Hands is -1, and that's interesting because Urshifu was critting through anyway. So this is pretty much the exact same position as game 1. So will we see that?
Did Mischievous really need Wo-Chien to stop the physical attackers? No, but it helped. It helped a lot. You know, you'd never end up dying to stuff that was like a random tech move. Like you would take super effective hits with Wo-Chien on the field. You don't take those without Wo-Chien on the field. So it helped a lot. But I mean, obviously you were here for that era. That team didn't end up going anywhere. But it had so much physical attacker hate. I basically beat all of the Chien-Pao Dragonite teams during that initial week with those two Pokemon alone. So I think Yusei's team is a much better implementation of that thought process, but it shows just how good that thought process can be. I mean, Wo-Chan is super specially defensive, is the thing. Wo-Chan's special defense is significantly higher than its defense. It just gets the boost from its ability to make defense not a problem. And I ran Snarl on my Wo-Chan. Yeah, Terra Hungry as well. So I definitely think, Volcarona is a much better recipient of the support here. But again, like, you can push these things to like real extremes to try and test them out. And I think this is a perfect example of one that's pushed just as far as it needs to be. It doesn't need to go any further, and it's showing the concepts that you can learn by pushing things to the extremes and applying them in a really interesting way, making a meta call on all the physical attackers in the format, and preparing a team specifically designed not necessarily to counter it, but to passively make that job harder. I think it's excellent team design.
Surging Strike's Wild Charge double up.
Yeah, and I think the Iron Hands even isn't intimidated either, so they're both...
It took the party shot.
I also want to say that I think on top of that, Shohei has actually a disadvantage coming into this tournament because he just won Worlds. He's running, I believe, the same 6 he won Worlds with. I'm not sure if the movesets and the EVs are the same, but I think he's running the same 6. And while that means he's got a lot of practice with it, that also means that everybody's seen it, everybody knows how he plays, so on and so forth. So...
yeah, I think that, like, it makes sense. Like,
yeah. It also makes sense why his team, they're talking now a lot of the Japanese teams, a lot of the Japanese players end up having really interesting teams. It makes sense why his is a lot more standard considering the amount of time that he had. So double switch on Yusei's side. I gotta imagine this is gonna be a ton of damage into whatever they're saying, or whatever they're looking at. We see the Surging Strikes in the Grimmsnarl. He did make the read. Excellent read. Nukes this Grimmsnarl. Actually, this Grimmsnarl lives. Oh, what a nasty set.
Like they're gonna terrestrialize, in which case it doesn't really matter. Oh, and a Voltage again, the exact, actually a better play compared to game 1, right? Like where it was Surging Strikes. Wow, that was a very, very aggressive read, but it pays off in spades for Shohei.
Definitely, like he knew the pressure he was exerting, knew that you.
This is another thing. We're looking at like a relatively defensive team versus a pretty aggressive team on Shohei's side, and defensive teams like kind of need bad things not happen to consistently win. That's something I experienced a lot when I was playing the team that I was talking about earlier in this match, featuring a very similar Cress and Grimmsnarl core with Belly Bolt, right? If nothing goes wrong, my Belly Bolt will probably never die, and I'll probably win the game. If the opponent reads me and like makes a really good play and takes out one of my mons on one of my cores so that I can't switch around as much, I can't like throw around parting shots and intimidates, and I can't get the healing off of my Belly Bolt, I'm in a much worse position. Hyper offense teams generally are allowed to make a couple more mistakes against these defensive teams because the defensive teams don't punish them immediately. So that's another thing to really take into consideration, right? Like the presence of hyper offense makes this a very volatile matchup, especially for the defensive player who wants consistency. So Shohei's team is providing a really interesting question that Yusei, like, the way I like to think about it, right, is like, think about like a call and response, right? Questions and answers. Shohei's team is always presenting a question, and it's not easy. It's not necessarily an easy question to solve, and it probably has multiple answers. And Yusei's job is to come up with answers to those questions that cover all possibilities, and that's really hard to do. Shohei does not need to think nearly as hard about his plays, generally. I'm not saying that he's like making brain dead plays. That's not at all what I'm saying. He just made an excellent read. I want to preface this. But Shohei, due to the nature of his team being more offensive, does not need to make as many calculations in general to defeat his opponent, which leaves brainpower open to go for these kinds of reads, to really like think about the psyche of your opponent. Whereas Yusei has to like really think about how do I not get punished for trying to exist? You know? So that's a really interesting team dynamic between these two as well.
Yusei just couldn't terrestrialize and go for the quiver dance again, so just pivots with the full switch. He even commented to me earlier that he felt he was carried so much by that move on Iron Hands, so I just love seeing how it helps in position like this. And now I see he brings in the Flutter Mane, which pressures so much.
Bringing the Flutter, yeah, that was such an excellent turn. Got a ton of damage onto that Grimmsnarl, and then moves into a position where Flutter Mane and Urshifu are on the field. These two are like the most destructive forces on his team, and other than Iron Hands helping pin down Pokemon with Fake Out, I'd say that this is the most powerful board state that Shohei has. And he's happened to bring it into Pokemon that don't really want to deal with this, right? I would like to see a Dazzling Gleam and a Taunt.
Yeah, but I think Shohei is just positioned to match.
Either that, or I'd like to either see a Dazzling Gleam and a Taunt into the Cresselia, or a Shadow Ball into Cresselia and kill the Grimmsnarl with your Urshifu.
Especially with Yusei not having the ability to protect with either of these Pokemon. But we see even more repositioning from Shohei, so just racking up.
Pulling it out is also fine. I feel like he's in such a good position. The Flutter Mane is the real focal point of this interaction.
I figured that you were trying to punish the Gyarados next. Here we go. Yuki, which screen is this?
So this is light screen.
Okay, interesting. Oh, and it's actually a Shadow Ball coming out, not a Dazzling Gleam.
Shadow Ball does like 45, I want to say. Moonblast doesn't do a whole lot. You know, we talked about earlier how this Cresselia doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. It doesn't really carry the team with its damage output. So, well, it's a great supportive Pokemon. Like, Yusei really needs to start accelerating his game plan, accelerating his win condition. With what he's got right now, Shohei is not threatened.
Absolutely, and the thing is that every time this lander
Yusei needs to somehow get Volcarona in here and get it set up.
But I suspect that Shohei is just going to U-turn. We're actually seeing the power of Volt Switch and U-turn, switching moves that allow you to make a decision in the middle of the turn while still doing some damage. So Gyarados coming in here. I mean, if this is a Terra Blast, I think it's a great position. Like, Shohei is threatening a KO on both Pokemon here, though I don't think you need to Terrestrialize for that. But yeah, no Terrestrialization. Reflect coming out. Fluttermane going to go for a Shadow Ball here into the Gyarados. Not going to read into the Ally Switch here. I think that makes sense. How much will this do? Fair bit of damage. Oh,
Big Sped-F drop. That's really unfortunate for him.
Into the Gyarados, so
Stopping into the Gyarados, he's kind of letting this Grimmsnarl exist, which I don't think is really a bad proposition, right? The worst thing it can do to you now is Spirit Break you or Parting Shot you. It's not picking up KOs. Again, remember, Yusei wins by getting Volcarona on the field and getting it set up, and he doesn't have either of those conditions met right now. And the rest of his team is bleeding. Shohei is in such a good position, and if this Grimmsnarl goes for Parting Shot, that doesn't stop his teammates from doing damage.
Whereas Cresselia can in a 1-versus-1. So we are going to see a Parting Shot coming out here, and like once again we're under the threat of Thunder Wave, and once again Shohei says, "I'm not going to let you Thunder Wave my Flutter Mane. Like, I don't care if I'm threatening a KO. Like, I'm not going to let you do it." Iron Hand switching in again here. Parting Shot coming out, lowering it to -1 attack. But, I mean, with the Reflect, this is meaningful. But the question is, who's coming in here? Is it
bringing it to -1 attack, I don't think really matters, because what you're really running this Iron Hands for in this situation is pinning stuff with Fake Out. Yeah, it's who's stomping into Crest. Yeah, so this is another thing that I talked about earlier, right? We saw that the only attacking moves on Shohei's side without Terra that are physical moves are Stomping Tantrum and U-turn. So if you're in a position where both of the Pokemon on the field can't be hit by Stomping Tantrum, you're not actually in a great spot. U-turn isn't a very powerful move. It's not stab. And your only other option is going for Terra Blast, which is special. And while you can run special moves on a Landorus T, like, you're generally not going to. Its attack stat is what you like. Its attack stat's 145. It's one of the highest attack stats in the game currently. And you're just not able to take advantage of that if you have to rely on a special move. So having two Pokemon that can't be hit by Stomping Tantrum on the field is a really interesting way to try and deal with this Landorus.
Oh, it's a waterfall. I'm sorry. I definitely... Oh, critical hit!
Crit on the waterfall. Good damage.
Huge.
I think he's potentially back in the game. Like, Cresselia has a lot of options. Yes, I think Shohei has the Fake Out pressure here, so he can definitely reposition. But yeah, I mean, Yusei has opportunities to read any switches, any U-turns, and go for a Thunder Wave. Cresselia could go for any Lunar Blessings to raise the stamina of Gyarados. Yeah, it's difficult for me to know how.
This is a really difficult position to be in because if you leave Gyarados in and you don't take care of this Iron Hands, which I don't think you can do, you're in a position where you might lose another Pokemon, and then you're in a really bad spot, I would say. Does fake out into the crest, so he's going to take some Rocky Helmet damage, brings him under half. I'd expect to see a U-turn. Yeah. U-turn into the crest, does another chip of damage, another little bit of damage, and lets him reposition again.
The question is, who's coming in? Is it going to be that Urshifu, or is it going to be the Flutter Mane?
So with Landorus not being able to do any...
I believe we saw Gyarados lock into Waterfall on the left slot, so this is actually going to do quite a bit to this Flutter Mane. It does slightly over half.
Does he go for it? Yeah!
Thunder Waves. Ooh, that's even better. So dropping the speed of this Flutter Mane actually allows you to be in a position where you can start bringing this game back. Flutter Mane being faster, because now we're in a position where every single thing on Shohei's team is slower than Volcarona, even before Quiver Dance. So that was an excellent read. I mean, he had to read that Orlando was going to U-turn. Happened to work out for him. Paralysis on Flutter Mane, dropping the speed is just so important. He needs to get the Volcarona in, he needs to get it set up, and now he's in a position to actually try and do that.
So I think a terrestrialization of water on the Volcarona could end up being pretty safe in the long term. So let's see, we see Lunar Blessing coming out from the Cresselia, being able to attack first. So that's a pretty fast Cresselia. And we see Yusei spraying, maybe he's going for that Waterfall.
Waterfall into Flutter, does over half. Now I think it's actually in range to kill. I think it's actually in range to die to unboosted Heat Wave. Unboosted helping and Heat Wave.
Yes, and it goes for the Volt Switch again.
Volt Switch into the Garrett, still lives.
It's not only the light screen, but that Iron Hands took a parting shot, so the special attack drop actually being relevant.
Whoops.
Here, which is funny. That's not often you see Iron Hand special attack coming into play, but
yep. So now we see a pivot maybe into the Landorus to lower Gyarados' damage output so that it can't knock out the Flutter Mane next turn. But with the help of Helping Hand, that could change things. And I think Shohei still hasn't terrestrialized.
I wish we were able to see what the individual health values of each of the Pokemon are. Shohei went from a pretty dominant position, like that one Thunder Wave connection. Put him from a really dominant position into an actually pretty threatening one.
Yes, I believe so. And I think also the Cresselia as well. So
this Landorus is faster than everything else on the field, but once he gets Volcarona in, then he's positioned where Volcarona is faster than everything. And I don't feel like...
I don't think Urshifu can beat Volcarona on a 1-versus-1. So once, like, yes, Quiver Dance is, like, tempting to go for a sweep, but, like, at a certain point, Heat Wave's going to do it. You know what I mean? So I think Shohei has to be very careful in terms of when he actually takes knockouts and which Pokemon he KOs in going for these knockouts.
And I think Volcarona can come in at any point this time, right? Like, it can Heat Wave and probably knock out the Flutter Mane, even if it terrestrializes.
Yeah, so what the casters are talking about, and kind of what I wanted to reiterate, I think I have a better way of saying it this time. Like, at some point, you're going to get a free switch in from your Volcarona because one of your Pokemon is going to die. And once that happens, we're starting to get really close to a situation where Yusei just clicks Heat Wave, and if it hits every time, he wins the game. We're getting really close to that eventuality. I'd say the only stuff that's really holding on, this Landorus, I think, is slightly high enough at HP, or like just barely above the threshold where it will live. And I don't think Urshifu will die in one hit, but we also saw that Urshifu only has Water-type moves. So if you decide to save the Terra, like we just said, that's super important for this team in this matchup, save the Terra for Volcarona and Terra it into water, you no longer die to the Urshifu. So everything you do is really just... Like at that point, your game plan is rock solid, right? He's done a good job wearing these things down. That Thunder Wave on the Flitter Mane is super huge because it allowed the Cresselia to go for a Lunar Blessing. Without that, we'd be in a much worse position. It might be even like a 1v1 or like a 1v4 at that point. But that going off allows Gyarados to stick around a turn longer and get a Waterfall off, which lowered the Flutter Mane into the Heat Wave range. So that singular Thunder Wave actually set up a situation where Yusei can just bring in the Volcarona and sweep. Excellent play. If it hadn't happened like that, I think Shohei just wins the game. Yeah.
So I think
We are getting very close to that singularity, the Volcarona singularity.
Volcarona is in great shape, but we see the switch out maybe to an Iron Hand, so that has a little bit more leeway next turn. But
To the Urshifu. Ooh.
Oh, and a U-turn. That's not going to pick up the KO here. And actually, more Rocky Helmet damage. Yuki, this is getting very close to being in Heat Wave range. A little more chip.
Yeah, that Landorus is right there.
Anymore, right? Like, I mean, the Urshifu is the only Pokemon at full health, but we know that it matches up very poorly into Volcarona as terrestrialized.
Here comes Iron Hands. And
Iron Hands.
Happens, another
Lunar Blessing.
So, like,
Yusei's running away with the game.
You know, adding up, but it's also subtracting down.
Yusei's running away with the game. Waterfall into hands, does some decent damage.
Also non-trivial.
Non-trivial damage. Like, okay, Waterfall.
Does a Moonblast kill now?
Certainly doesn't beat Iron Hands, but when you start hitting it like with over and over and over again,
Moonblast might kill.
Wild charge.
That could have pushed the Iron Hands into Bug Buzz range. Its Assault Vest has a lot of HP, so it might have been able to take it early before the Waterfall, but now I think Yusei might position the Volcarona to be its one enemy in terrestrial form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just so hard to break this Cresselia. Kind of the unsung hero here is the screens that it set up.
Yes.
When it set up those screens, it was like looking kind of bad, and we're actually seeing like the dividends that.
The casters are talking about the Grimmsnarl setting up the screens. This is sort of what I was getting at right on the earlier portion, right? Like, Grimmsnarl does not need to be around for very long to get its job done. And it did. It got its job done. These Pokemon are surviving hits that they have no business surviving. And it's bringing Yusei back into this game. It's fine that Grimmsnarl went down early. Grimmsnarl going down early allowed you to switch in a new Pokemon and start running your game plan, meaning that you get more turns to take advantage of your screens. I don't know why that was so hard for me to come up with. But every other Pokemon gets more turns to take advantage of their screens. It's sort of like a very similar thing when you're running like Omega Hyper Offense and your Tailwind Setter dies, so you can bring in more sweepers. That's the same kind of idea. It's just in a much different form, right? This is the defensive version of that.
Happened here by going for it. Urshifu going to protect here. So question is what is Iron Hands going for and what is Yusei going for?
Right. We see the Moonblast going into the Urshifu. Probably not going to, unless it wants a Thunder Wave, but it waterfalls into the Iron Hands.
Waterfall, do we see the flinch?
Very bad. Oh!
See the flinch.
A huge flinch there. Iron Hands.
So I actually do want to talk about this a little bit. I don't think the Moonblast needed to go into the Urshifu there because you already know that your Volcarona beats that Urshifu 1v1. If the Moonblast goes into the Iron Hands, then you're in a position where the Iron Hands dies this turn, and you're not needing to rely on the flinch to make your Gyarados live. Now, that being said, because the flinch went off, you're actually in a better position because this Iron Hands is still on the field. It guaranteed dies this turn. You can do whatever you want to its partner, right? But that's really risky. I believe Waterfall only has like a 10% chance to flinch. It could be higher, but the point is you relied on a low percentage roll to make that happen when I don't think you really needed to worry about Moonblasting into this Urshifu anyway. And you know that this hands can't protect, right? So the only thing it can do to avoid dying if you double up into it is switch out, in which case you're doubling into whatever they bring in, which is also good for you. I don't think the Moonblasting your Urshifu is necessary at all. You can leave this Urshifu at full health. As long as you don't switch your Volcarona in recklessly, you're going to be in a position where your Volcarona wins against this 1v1 anyway.
Like, it looked so threatening. It did so much damage to so many of Yusei's Pokemon, but I mean, the Volt Switch actually kind of, I feel like maybe just taking trades here would have been better at a certain point.
Yes.
I mean, hindsight's 2020, me on the analyst desk, but yeah. I mean, like, we've talked, it's so funny how much pressure Volcarona is exerting here because
it's not even on the board. It has barely.
Also, another thing to talk about, we're seeing a lot of switching out from Shohei, but, in this matchup, he's the aggressor, right? And he wins by overwhelming his opponent early. I made the point early on, before the match started, that I think the longer the game goes, the higher the chance of Yusei winning is. Because he's got sustain, he's got punishment for physical attackers, and it gives him chances to set up. And Shohei sort of just, stepped off the gas for a lot of turns. And while he managed to keep Pokemon alive, I don't think that's really going to end up mattering, and I think it's actually going to bite him. You know, if you try and remove these threats early and get it down to just like a 1v2 maybe, you're probably in a better spot. It feels almost unwinnable at this point, and it's almost entirely because he took his foot off the gas, and Cresselia punished him by just going for Lunar Blessings. You know, it's understanding the role of your team in the matchup that I think that I'm getting at here. You know, it's really easy, you know, if you're playing like straight hyper offense to know what your role is. Shohei is playing an aggressive balance team, and he sort of just leaned really heavily on the balance and not so much on the aggression, and he's getting punished really hard for it here.
Even showed
Yeah,
up.
it showed up, it switched down, it took a little damage. Here comes the surging strikes here, afraid to attack the Cresselia. We see the deterrent that is Rocky Helmet here.
Yes.
And Gyarados is so tanky. We see the value of that Citrus Berry. Without it, it would have gone down, but with it, it's still alive. This Gyarados has been on the field for so long. It got special defense dropped, and it's still here. Moonblast coming out again under 50%, but I mean, this damage is adding up, and while Yusei is healing thanks to Lunar Blessing,
Yeah, Moonblast does 45%. I'm also really happy to see, you know, we saw before that Yusei went for Terra on Cresselia to try and pick up the KO on Urshifu, and I think that was a mistake. He's saving the Terra now. He knows it's going to do 45, and he's okay with that. Now, this is actually kind of an interesting turn, because you're in a position now where your Gyarados does die to this Urshifu.
Has fallen to below 1 minute. For those of you who don't know, players have a total of 7 minutes to make all of their moves to the game. That time doesn't run once they've selected a move, but Shohei has used 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Thanks, math. Of his time already. So, oh yeah, this Cresselia has ally switch as well. Ally switching. If Urshifu ally switches or attacks surging strikes into
Wow,
Cresselia,
yeah, this is a huge mind game. I forgot about ally switch. Ally switch actually makes it so that this Gyarados might not die. If this Gyarados lives and kills this Fluttermane, game's over. If this Gyarados dies... Okay, so he does make the read. This is surging into this Gyarados. So he removes the Gyarados, and now he needs his Fluttermane to break through paralysis and hit a Shadow Ball on this Cresselia. I'm not sure it matters at this point. I think the damage is already done, and Volcarona can win on its own. But if he does not kill the Cresselia this turn, I think it's guaranteed over.
Talking about a Volcarona, but like, doesn't have enough to take down all 3 Pokemon.
I think Light Screen just expired the previous turn, so that's a big knockout.
Oof. Okay, so now we're in a position.
Again, all of a sudden, Shohei in the Pokemon lead. Though their time is running pretty low here.
Whew.
Was that a screen ending?
That was a reflect ending.
Grimmsnarl's still in. I didn't realize Grimmsnarl was still alive. I thought it died.
So yeah,
So you can set screens back up. I'd like to see a light screen this turn. We know that Urshifu is not going to do a whole lot of damage to your Volcarona once you Terra it. So I'd like to see a light screen and a Terra, and then go for Heat Waves.
Right, yeah, that's wild. Yeah, they made a very aggressive read there. Here we go, taking advantage of the time they have left, thinking about whether or not they want to set up a...
Now, if that ally switch doesn't go off,
it does look like a reflect is going to get set up here. We are going to see the trust.
then this game's over.
It is.
wow.
Here we go.
Or like, if he doesn't read the ally switch, this game's already over. So that was massive.
If not for it, you know, maybe Taunt could do something. Oh, Urshifu actually terrestrializing here.
Terra Water, this does change our math. We saw that it did about 36 when it was burned earlier. We never got to see how much the full damage would do previously.
Yeah, so I guess it's a double.
And it Terra'd first. We saw previously that the Volcarona was faster. So this is a speed tie.
Paralyzed either. So I mean, could this be the damage that Shohei needs? It's gonna be really.
Oh my god, this is a speed tie.
First up, Reflect. Although it's not. Oh, first up, Aqua Jet. Picking up the KO on the Grimmsnarl, not letting it set up Reflect.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that. Wow. So yeah, Grimmsnarl couldn't get any screens up, and now we can see a Shadow Ball. No, first
QD. Oh my god, that's so risky.
Still up, or am I incorrect about? No,
both
first.
screens
There's
are
no
gone.
screens.
So can this Fluttermane attack?
How much does Flutter do?
A critical hit would end this.
Absolutely.
No. Wait,
No
that
special
didn't
defense
do.
drop.
Oh, but Yuki, the Urshifu is no longer fighting type, which means Bug Buzz is now effective against it.
Oh.
So the question is,
God, this is so many 50-50s. God, I think you have to. I think if you're, oh my god, if he goes for Bug Buzz into this, if Shohei wins this off of insane reads.
Terra Water in part a bait to get the Bug Buzz to lock into that
Oh
slot.
my goodness.
Will Flutter may be able to attack here?
Oh. Shadow Ball. Is it in Akujet range?
No.
No way.
But it's in Surging Strike's range for sure.
Bro.
I think he definitely still wants to bug buzz that slot.
3 minutes left. This battle's so close. The question is, oh man, I feel like you have to
You
bug
have to
buzz.
Heat Wave doesn't kill. You die to Aqua Jet.
And oh, he goes to the
Aqua Jet. Oh, wait, this could be
Do it.
70 down to.
Oh my god, that did so much damage. A crit.
Oh,
He wave hits both. We get a crit here. No.
no crit. Is there a burn?
No burn.
No burn,
my
this is over.
goodness.
Oh my god, Shohei played just
What a
out of his
match.
mind there.
Oh my goodness. I mean, without the crit, I think Volcarona is still getting 2-shot. It needed the burn there and had 2 opportunities with Flame Body and Heat Wave, but oh man, what a great call to terastallize Urshifu. They saved Landorus the whole game. It felt like, oh yeah,
Yes.
Landorus gonna take the Terra, of course. Saw
Because Landorus would die now too, right? Like if he removes this Urshifu, if he goes for Heat Waves and he just kills everything, right? Like he wins.
Celebrating a little bit.
God, that is wild. Shohei made so many great reads. Like there's not even analysis that I can do there, right? Like Shohei just makes crazy reads and he wins the game off of it. He got in his head. He understood exactly what he was going for and then he went for it. You know, you can talk about like it being a potential bait into bug buzzing into the Urshifu, but like
He was really turned on the Jets in the first 1 or 2 turns, and then became a little bit too passive.
you know, if he just Heat Waves, I think he wins anyway because I don't think Urshifu can kill him fast enough. And that crit might have mattered too, actually.
I feel like it was the turn.
I think if he just spams Heat Wave, Urshifu dies in 2. Fluttermane dies that turn.
Because so I think so there. Yusei went for ally switch
and
Moonblast and lost
then
Charles
Lander
and,
dies,
like,
and then
Cresselia on the same turn.
Yes.
And
you
then it
protect
took
on hands.
into the Urshifu, the damage would have been enough that he
Actually, what is the out there? I guess I don't know the damage calcs, right? And it all depends on not dying to burn.
But we
or
were
not
very
getting
fortunate
burned by
that we
Flame
could
Body.
invite our players in
But-
to talk about the match. So
Wow.
guys, yeah, we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, he played to his out. He played to his out.
Yeah.